It's time to talk the route for the 2024 Cape Town Marathon. The race is just around the corner, and let's delve into what to expect and the best way to attack it come race day. My name is Brad Nadauld. We've got Lindsey Parry with us. Lindsey, nice to catch up. The clock is ticking, race just around the corner, and I love doing these route run-throughs because this is when it starts getting really real that we're going to be running a marathon. How are you feeling? Are the butterflies flying in formation?
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous. I feel like I've gotten myself into reasonably good shape. Still not sure if the sub 3 hour marathons are in me, but at least I'm starting to feel like I'm in and around the 3 hour ish mark. So yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to running the new route. I know that it's very similar to last year. Um, and I did Amsterdam last year, so now I'm back in the mother city running locally again. And it does look a bit quicker. It's just over 200 meters as opposed to 300 meters of climbing. So I think we've got a fastish route, and now it's a question of running it the right way so that you can get the best out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talking sub 3. I'm definitely not going anywhere near sub 3. But if all goes according to plan, I will be going more than an hour faster than I did last year. So there's a huge jump for me as well. Let's talk about the route. My wheels came off big time last year. And as much as we're doing this for the entire field, I wanted to wrap my head around it. So, going to be asking you a few questions about how do we attack this thing, but let's break it down into quarters because I think that's probably the best way to attack any marathon, and it's probably a good way to attack Cape Town. Let's talk about the start and the first 10Ks. What's the best way to approach that when it comes to Cape Town this year?
Yeah, Brandon, it's really important to kind of use these pods that we've done for Cape Town Marathon together. So you can start putting them together and understanding why we're giving the advice that we give across the three. But yeah, nice start outside the DHL Stadium, which I really like. I mean, it makes me kind of feel connected to the big sporting events that happen in and around Cape Town. So very exciting start, which I love. And you start and run towards the ocean, which again for me always just so lekker when you are in Cape Town and we've got in some international visitors is like take us to what's beautiful, and that is the sea. And we're going to hit right onto Beach Road, and then you're going to make your way towards and around the waterfront. And really, what's important to note in there is that there is a little bit of work. So we start nice and fast. Okay, it's nice and flat and fast until we start getting into the waterfront, and that'll take you to around about kind of 4.5 kilometers, where it's been mostly flat, slightly lumpy, but it's been mostly flat and easy. And so you really just want to make sure that you're not overpowering those first 4.5 Ks. And then there's definitely a little bit of work, which again, to me, not bad timing for that bit of work. As we start making our way towards getting onto the highway, and running up from the foreshore, and that just kind of, hey, we're running a marathon. If we've been going too fast, let's just dial that back a little bit. And that's kind of how I would approach that section. And then it's nice and quick again as we come off the highway and make our way into Woodstock, and through Woodstock, which is always deceptive there. It's not flat. Um, there is a little bit of work, so you get some pulls. Often that's where the prevailing wind is too. And so we really want to make sure through this section that we are checking in, how am I feeling, monitoring all our systems, making sure that we are being quite conservative. And we also know that post this point, we're going to be rewarded with some really cool kilometers. So that's kind of the first 10Ks, a little bit conservative, tiny little bit of work in there at around the 4.5 ish K mark. Um, bit of climbing up along the highway, from that's about 7 to, yeah, let's call it 9, and then from 9 through to 12. So I've gone a little bit past the first 10, but you just know that from just after 9, the route definitely gets itself quite a lot easier. and we are making our way through. At that point, we're starting to get into Rondebosch, Newlands, that kind of area. So leafy suburbs, normally some really good crowd support there too.
Yeah, Lindsey, before we jump into that second, but where the crowd support and that is as well, I think it's important. You mentioned like these videos are probably good to watch in association with each other, because we did one on pacing, and if you don't get it right, particularly early on, you can really mess up your race later on. So we've put together pacing bands for you as well. If you scan the QR code that's on screen right now, you can get access to the pacing band, and then you can pick those pick them up from our stand at the expo as well at the few days leading up to race day. But let's talk about that second quarter, if you'd like, Lindsey. I mean, the hard work last year, you mentioned the prevailing winds last year. The wind was pumping on that highway section up through Main Road, where there is a bit of work to do, but you're running into the wind. And then the stretch, the second sort of quarter, there's quite a bit of crowd support, particularly as you come towards halfway around the Rondebosch Common. That it's, again, easy to get carried away and get really excited because you're still feeling quite good. And although you might have worked a little bit harder than you would have hoped to in that first 10, you can really let the race get away with you in the second quarter. Talk us through the best way to manage from where you've left off at about 12 right the way through to halfway.
Yeah, so you've hit a really nice phase there. Use the crowd to kind of, I like to use the crowd here to have fun rather than to get motivated, okay? Because it's still very early in the race and we don't want to overpower. Nice leafy suburbs. So even if the prevailing wind is blowing in that direction, often it can be a bit more protected there. And so that's really nice, particularly once you kind of duck off Main Road and you go behind Newlands at the hotel at the Southern Sun there. When you duck in behind and you head into Claremont, those sections are pretty nice. You've got some gentle rollers, nice and fast, as I said, crowd, leafy, and you can kind of get into this mindset of, okay, I need to catch up, especially if it's been a bit windy. And you don't want to do that. I mean, really what you want to do is hold yourself back and kind of conserve yourself for the second half of the marathon. So I covered the part that said it's very easy till about 12 kilometers, and then rolling to a little bit of work up to about 14.678. Let's call it 15 Ks to make it easier. And then again, we're prevailing more towards the down. So, and this is the exact part where I'm talking about, where you can then get a bit carried away, draw too much energy from the crowd. And then a couple of lumpy kilometers lead us into halfway, coming back now through Rondebosch towards Rondebosch Boys High, around the common, and then you kind of now are homeward bound. Yeah, and I think that's not too far away from your hood, Brad. So you're probably going to also see a lot of people there that you know. So that's kind of as you get through halfway, where you want to just get control of your excitement a little bit. Halfway is what I like to call not quite halfway mentally in a marathon. So you don't want to let the dogs out just yet.
Yeah, and that's exactly where the dogs got let loose last year, Lindsey, and then the wheels fast fell off in the second half. So let's talk about that sort of third quarter, if you'd like, and for a lot of people, this is where you can make or break a marathon. And in Cape Town, it's quite tough because once you've gone through halfway, you're heading back towards the city. There's still that nasty little stretch. I know you don't mind it too much, but I didn't have fun on that sequence stretch in the final quarter, which we'll talk about next. But the stretch heading past like Hartley Vale back into town, it's not the prettiest part of the Cape Town Marathon. It generally can get quite warm as well. And again, it's one of those things that's probably where mentally it's the hardest part in my mind of this marathon.
Yeah, 100%, Brad. So like 21 Ks, it's quite nice running there again, and often prevailing wind. So let's hope that is the case, because then you do feel like you've been blown back to the finish. And then from you come out of the Rondebosch Common just past halfway, and then you drop down towards Mowbray. So that section's quite nice and fast, and it almost gives you like a sense of, hey, I'm in the second half. We're getting there. And then I like to look at 25 kilometers as my as my mental halfway. Okay. At that point in time, I'm often feeling my best. And I feel like if you've paced yourself well in a marathon and you prepared well for the marathon, that the 25K mark is almost the glory kilometers. Okay. Now, the trick here is to take advantage of that sensibly. Okay. So 25Ks to go. I always tell people that if you're on a really good day, this is kind of the part where you can get a little bit ahead of what you think you're capable of. But we're not talking 15 seconds a kilometer. I mean, you don't want to lose your mind. But you can definitely go between 2 and I'd say 5, 6 seconds at most per K faster through this section. And as you start to feel really good at 25 Ks, that's going to take you, I think 25 Ks is Salt Riverish. And I think that's kind of where you're talking about on a Sunday. It can be quite quiet. But I feel like if we just keep the route as it is now, Cape Town, if anyone from Cape Town Marathon is listening, if we keep the route the same over for the next couple of years, this part will start to fill up, and then we'll start to get more crowd support, and maybe some of those restaurants will stay open through that section. But you are right that from that little bit, it can be quite quiet as you approach and go through Salt River. And then we are starting to get into the tougher last quarter. And really, this quarter ends with a pretty but difficult run up. So we're going to hook a left and move towards town. And then at 30 Ks, as you're literally moving into that final quarter, you're going to kick up and go through Company Gardens up towards Orange Street. And again, Brad, you said that that's going to be really nice and pretty. And as it's getting hotter, it's going to provide a little bit of shade, which I think is great. And I have a feeling there'll be some kind of really cool activation there. It lends itself to it. So again, there's going to be like crowds. And where I said before, use the crowds for fun. I think as you move into the last quarter, use the crowds for their energy. So this is the part where you can, hopefully the crowds will get you to get a little bit carried away if you've got the energy to do so.
Yeah, and for me, like, this is probably the biggest change from the route from last year to this year is the turn up. I think it's Government Avenue that you go up through Company Gardens, where last year we went up Plain, and it was. I mean, by the time I got there last year, it was super hot. There was a fair amount of crowd support, but it's a tough pull up. So having that little bit of extra shade going through Company Gardens, and I think you're right. I think they will, hopefully, fingers crossed. If they haven't, hopefully they watch this and do something. They've still got a little bit of time to organize it, but I'm sure they will be doing something as we go through Company Gardens, which is cool. And then Long Street on the way down, starting the final quarter, is quite festive, and it's quite a nice run down Long Street. But then the final quarter, people either love or hate this final stretch, Lindsey, because I don't know. It's one of those things. Like I love races where you can hear the finish as you're coming into the finish, and you know you're getting close. But with the Cape Town Marathon, they let you hear the finish way too soon, in my opinion. But talk us through that final quarter and how to get through it.
No, don't get me wrong, Brad. It's mentally tough going past the stadium, and I think part of what you've got to do with that is have yourself totally mentally prepped for what's coming. So you hit Long Street at 32 Ks, and then it's a really nice drop down to just over 33 Ks, and that drop down pretty much carries on until you hit through Greenpoint. And that's the point where the crowds are fantastic. So yes, mentally you're looking to your right and you can see the finish, but the crowds there are actually quite deep through Greenpoint on either side of the road. So if you both just know that at 35 Ks you are not at the finish, you've still got 7K. So you mentally prepare yourself for the fact that you are going to run past the finish. And secondly, just focus on the crowd immediately around you, because the crowds there really were fantastic 2 years ago when I was there. And I've seen photographs. It'll be great. And you've just really got to give yourself a little bit of self-talk, because it is at the very least quite flat. I recall finishing down there in 2021, and thinking to myself, you tell everyone how flat this is. So there are these like slight little drags that when you are marathon tired, you can feel them. But honestly, it's pretty flat. You do have the beach, not the beach, the sea to look at. So when you get to Sea Point turnaround, that is at 38.9. So you really know that you are so close. Look, this is off a GPS file, so maybe I'm not super accurate, but at absolute most, that is over 38, but a little bit less than 39. So you really know that you're 3Ks from the finish when you then turn around at the Sea Point pool, and it's a really pretty. And so I totally get why the race organizers have taken the race that way. It is pretty. You can appreciate the view that is there. The spectators will start building up from about 2Ks to go, by a kilometer to go, nice and thick crowd support, and then really good finish with loads of people around the finish line that you can enjoy. And then the actual finish itself, Greenpoint Park, just really cool place to sit and enjoy what you've achieved, be proud of yourself and celebrate with people you trained with, your supporters, your family. Yeah, just a really great vibe there at the finish line.
Yeah, it is really cool. And if you want to grab your pacing chart, scan the QR code that's on screen right now. Make sure you come through to the expo. Look out for the Coach Parry stand. If you've got any questions about race day and making sure you run it properly, then definitely come through to the stand and have a chat to us. The team, whole team will be down, which is great. And then also, if you want to make sure that you taper for this thing properly, we've done a video on making sure that you get the taper exactly spot on, and you can click on the video that's on screen right now to watch that.